Hello and welcome. We're going to talk tonight about a very important and interesting topic. Not too long ago, I did a show on Alzheimer's, and in the course of that interview, I learned something I had not known before, and that is that there are different risks for Alzheimer's depending on what ethnic or racial group you are in. And that was almost startling to me. I had not learned that in the past. So we're going to talk tonight about that, why that's so, what are some of the reasons. And with me are two women who are very much immersed in the field. My first guest is Robbin Frazier. And welcome, Robbin.
Thank you for having us here today.
Oh, you're so welcome. Robbin is the Director of Diversity and Inclusion at the Alzheimer's Association, Minnesota, North Dakota chapter. We'll talk more about what she does there in a minute. My second guest is Yoli Chambers, and she is with Centro Tyrone Guzman in Chicago and Franklin that serves the Hispanic community, and it's a wonderfully diverse social service and health agency. Yes. So welcome, Yoli.
Thank you, Mary. Thanks for having us.
You've been there 6 years, you told me.
Yes.
And as the director of the Health and Wellness Department, what are some of the things that are under your umbrella?
Yeah, so at Centro Tyrone Guzman, we promote the health and well-being of families through different educational classes and family engagement activities. So in the Health and Wellness Department, we serve all ages from ages 0 all the way to 100. So we have prenatal classes, and we have nutrition classes too for the family. We have a Wise Elders group that is our seniors program, but we also connect all of these families with different resources that they need. And one of the programs that we have in the Health and Wellness Department is the work that we do with caregivers that are taking care of someone with Alzheimer's or another type of dementia. And we also do a lot of workshops in the community to create awareness.
And your agency is the largest, isn't it?
It is.
Social service agency for the Latino population.
Yeah, we serve more than 7,000 individuals every year.
And how long has it been around?
43 years.
Oh my goodness, I didn't realize that. That's a long-standing institution, isn't it?
It is.
You also work with teenagers.
We do.
And you said, 0 to 100, but some of your teen programs sounded so important.
Definitely. In the education department, we have a Simbra Montessori preschool for kids from 3 to 6 years old. It's a dual language. So they grow up learning both languages. And also we have a youth program that raises after school programs. So they do homework, they have different educational activities, cultural activities, they have a lot of fun, but we also have a family nights because we believe it is very important to keep that communication with the families.
Well, so as you say, all ages, and with your work as Director of Diversity, you're, as you were telling me, out in the community a lot, right, Robbin?
Yes, I am. My job has two parts to it. One part is going out and meeting with the providers, so the hospitals, clinics, and physicians and other health professionals to bring awareness to the importance of early screening, diagnosis, letting people know.
For Alzheimer's or any dementia.
Or any dementia. And we also want to make sure that the providers are able to share information with the families if they receive a diagnosis of Alzheimer's or another dementia, so that they know about the resources at the Alzheimer's Association, the care groups, and resources at Yoli's organization, and many more. So it's really important that the families receive that information. Otherwise, they just don't even know where to begin, and we can help them begin.
Yes, another great institution. The Kaiser Permanente healthcare organization out in California recently did a study and included 274,000 people, which is really significant, looking at incidence of Alzheimer's depending on race and ethnic background. And it's not equal across the board. Tell us the statistics that you folks, I know you're both using similar statistics. What kind of differences are there that are noteworthy?
What we know in terms of Alzheimer's disease and the prevalence of it is that 2/3 of the people that have the disease are women, so that's one of the disparities that you see. The other one is the ones that we see with our diverse communities. So African Americans are twice as likely to develop Alzheimer's or dementia when compared to older whites, and Latinos and Hispanics are 1.5 times more likely to develop Alzheimer's and dementia. There's other communities where, you know, they just haven't had enough of the research studies there, but what we know is that it's not linked to race or ethnicity specifically. We know that heart disease and so the cardiovascular area and diabetes place people at greater risk. And so when you look at the African American community, the Latino community, also the Native American community, that's where you're going to see the higher rates of things like diabetes and the cardiovascular disease. And therefore, with the strong correlation with Alzheimer's, they're at greater risk for the disease.
So right there, I guess, is our answer. It's the link to these big, almost epidemic conditions. But why? What if I had heart disease, which I don't, but if I did, why would that make me more prone to getting Alzheimer's? Do you understand the biology there?
Yes. Well, I'm not a scientist, but you know, I do stay up on the research, and a lot of it has to do with the flow of blood. So with a lot of the cardiovascular disease, I remember when my mother was having cognitive issues. Later we found out that she needed a triple bypass. And so what was happening is our bodies are just so intelligent, and they know that the brain and the heart are the organs to keep that blood flow. So when you have diseases that impact the blood flow, that's going to reduce blood flow to, you know, the brain also with that.
That makes sense. Now, what about diabetes? What is the link there?
The diabetes, again, also has vascular issues. Lots of times you'll hear about people having damage with their kidneys. It affects the blood vessels, for example, with your eyes. And often, you know, if the diabetes goes uncontrolled, you'll see people that end up suffering complications such as amputations. And again, that's linked with, you know, the problem with the flow of blood in their legs. So
that makes sense. So this is helping me understand. When we look at the African American and Hispanic communities in terms of wanting to get health care under control, Alzheimer's still has stigma, doesn't it?
Yeah.
I mean, for everybody. I think everybody is anxious about it. Do you think it has increased stigma in each of your populations?
I think there is, in the Latino community, there is still a lot of a stigma, and that's why we're having a lot of workshops to educate the community about what is Alzheimer's and how is it gonna progress and what can they do. Our community still associate the word Alzheimer's or dementia with craziness, which is very hard, and that's why they try to keep everything at home so no one knows about it and they don't ask for help. So that's why we're working very hard in this area. And to reduce that stigma, if we reduce the stigma, then we will reduce feelings of isolation, feelings of burnout.
So they maybe would have some symptoms, but would not want to share that with the doctor for fear that they might be thought of as being crazy or get a diagnosis they don't want to hear about?
They don't want to hear about, but there is also misunderstanding of the warning signs. They think that the warning signs are a normal part of aging. So that's why they don't talk with the doctor about this, and it's hard to get
and
it
Alzheimer's
delays the
is
diagnosis.
not a normal part of aging, is it?
No.
So the concept of it being a medical condition is not totally understood then.
Yes.
And I guess it isn't for most of us.
Right.
But
Yeah, and we find similar things in the African American community. There is that stigma where people, it gets described as people maybe being a bit touched or, in the mind, or people thinking that it's a mental health issue. So again, there you have that stigma where people are afraid, is this going to change my life? Overnight. So it really is important to do the education so that they understand that there's many things that may look like dementia, but they may be caused by other things that are reversible and not related at all to that. So we encourage people through the education to go to their doctor and to share the symptoms that they're having so that, other things can get ruled out. That's one of the first things they'll do.
so things like depression can mimic Alzheimer's, can't it, or dementia?
Yes.
Poor nutrition can sometimes, am I right?
Yes,
Are there
that's
some other
correct.
things that could be ruled out?
Oftentimes, people will have trouble with their medications. Sometimes for the elders, it becomes difficult if you're taking 10 or 15 pills a day, and then the interaction of those. So those may cause confusion. It, may change their personality, and so that's why it's really important. For people, you would hate to have them live in that fear that I have dementia, when in reality, it could be another medical condition. And then if they get that diagnosis and it is Alzheimer's or another form of dementia, there are medications that help you manage the symptoms. And so those medications improve the quality of life. A lot of people will say there isn't a cure or anything to delay onset or progression, so they think, they throw up their hands, whether it's people in the community or some providers. They're thinking, well, why do we have to address this and do anything? And we talk about people empowered to make decisions about their health and financial and legal. And then we talk about them living well and vibrant lives. So it's a progressive brain disease. Your life will not, change overnight. And we want people to be active.
That's important for people to know, isn't it? It might take 15 years for it to become extremely debilitating.
Yes.
Real quickly, can you run over some of the main symptoms of Alzheimer's? Yoli, do you want to take that?
Sure. One of them is the memory loss that disrupts with life. So if I always said this, I always forget things, but those are the things that people need to be more worried about, is that maybe if I forget where I live, or where my family lives, or if I always use the keys of my car and then suddenly I take the keys and I don't know, I said, like, what are those keys for?
Right, not knowing that those are keys.
Yes.
Yeah, that's when it's a problem, right?
That's when it's a problem. I get confused where I am. Like, I don't know, like, if it's summer, and I know it's summer, we know which clothes to wear for summer, but then I just wear a jacket, or, it's like, you need to know exactly where you are, which day it is.
So orientation, kind of, right?
Yeah. And other symptoms is maybe communication. If I start forgetting words that I use most of the time, then if I forget that's a pen, then I start saying, like, Mary, can you please give me that thing, give me that thing.
So just forgetting the name of someone you met at church or the name of a city you read about. I mean, that's not the kind of thing we're talking about when you talk about forgetting, right?
Yeah.
Right. It's really, with Alzheimer's disease, lots of times people think it's just the memory, but it's really not being able to do things that you did in the past. So you were able to pick up the telephone and dial the number of your children, and that's difficult. You were able to set up your medications, but now you're confused about doing that. And I know everybody always, jokes about the keys. And it's like, if we can retrace where we were that day, and so, I had the keys, but I went out to garden. I'm going to check the garden. Then I went to the front yard and I watered the flowers. If we can do that retracing, that's, just normal things that are on our mind. But when the keys, we can't retrace where we were or where they might be, and they're in the freezer or some unusual place that you would never think to find them. So it's the interruption of what you've done. And that's what, makes it challenging for both the person with dementia and for their caregiver, is losing the ability to do things that they were always able to do.
Yeah.
One of the differences that you've been sharing with me before we were on camera here is that in both the African American and the Latino communities, taking care of one's own is a value that is extremely important and long-standing. Can you talk about that, and maybe I'll ask you each, in terms of how that impacts getting care for Alzheimer's?
Yes, we are very, very family-centered, and that's the last option, to send the loved ones to a different place. So when a family receives this diagnosis, they usually, one of them stop working to take full responsibility of that person, which brings a lot of economical stressors because they receive less income, and they will have to spend more money in medical appointments and treatments, the medicine, all of that. Also, it is very important if they receive that diagnosis, it's extremely important if they build a care team. So they talk with all the family, and they said they kind of like make some schedules on trying to bring more help and resources. So that's why it's very important. Yeah.
So in a way, it becomes a bigger responsibility for the family, though, than it might in some other communities, correct?
Yes.
So more potential for burnout and more potential for health problems for the ones doing the caregiving.
Yes,
Can
definitely.
you comment on that too? The same?
Yeah, I was going to say similar with as we're out in the community and talking with African American families. I've also worked with West African families, Hmong families. I just think traditionally, those families, they haven't had things like senior living and assisted living and nursing homes. That's just not even a part of what they consider, and the elders are very respected, and there is that view that the best care they're going to get is going to be from their family members who love and cherish them, and it's going to be keeping them in their community. And families are also very concerned that if they move them to a facility to live, are they going to have the staff, the language skills to communicate with them?
That's an extra problem.
That's an
isn't it?
extra problem. And are they
Right.
going to understand the cultural traditions and the food? I mean, all of those things come into play. So you can imagine somebody that is away from their family, their friends, their church. They're eating food that is not anything that's been in their diet. And so lots of times when you look at the people in the diverse communities, they've worked in these different facilities. And so they understand the services of there and those things, but they just feel feel like for their families, they want to have them at home. But unlike in the days, when we were dealing with other chronic conditions and maybe you knew that somebody would be passing away, that duration of care might be
years.
A year, 2, 3 years. What we know about this disease is it impacts everybody in the family, and while the average time from diagnosis until a person passes away is 4 to 8 years, many people are living with this disease 10, 15, even 20 years. And so when you think about the progression of the disease, you're going to have someone that for a large part of that time is going to need 24-hour care.
So it starts sounding to me like this is really tough for families, no matter how loving, no matter how, responsible and dedicated. That's a lot of years of caretaking. And then that person or persons, they're at risk too of having health conditions, right, that are tough to deal with.
Right.
And they're overextending perhaps. Do you see this changing at all with more information, more homes that perhaps are sensitive to the needs of diverse populations?
Yeah, I think one of the changes is as I do my work and our whole team at the Alzheimer's Association and Yoli does her work, as we're educating people, we're talking about the progression of the disease and we're talking about the duration. And for example, our care consultants will talk to a family about what Yoli talked about, which is building a care plan. How can you get multiple people involved with the care, even if there's a primary caregiver that is leaving, their career to be home? How do other people help let that person have the opportunity for them to go to the eye doctor, the dentist? Because often you can run into situations where the caregiver's health declines.
Right.
They might even pass away because they are so busy giving care around the clock, they don't have those resources that they need.
Or if they do end up having their loved one go to a nursing home or assisted living, the guilt can be extremely hard to deal with too, can it?
Yeah.
Do you want to talk about that?
Yeah, I just want to add one thing that there are many resources, not few resources in Spanish, but I know there are more resources in this area in English. But having health insurance makes a huge difference. So we're very worried for those families who don't have health insurance. They don't know that something's happening. They know that something's happening and they know they need help. But there is that huge barrier accessing those healthcare resources to receive the diagnosis.
So getting some kind of health insurance is crucial, isn't it?
It is.
I'm getting the signal that we need to give people some resources. So take out your paper and pencil. I think this will be helpful to be able to pursue some of your questions. First of all, the Alzheimer's Association website, it's just great. We'll tell you a lot about classes and support groups and all kinds of resources. You just go to alz.org/MNND. We'll put that on the screen. And then the association has a wonderful 24/7 phone helpline. And that number is 800-272-3900. And then Yoli's organization, Centro Tyrone Guzman, the website is centromn.org. And the phone number, take this down, is 612-874-1412. 612-874-1412. Well, I have so many more questions, but we're almost out of time. Is there any one thing you'd like to say to viewers that you didn't get to say that you think is important for people to hear?
Yeah. One thing I would say is that if the viewers have concerns about themselves or a family member or a friend, to please call our 1-800 number. You know, there they can ask any questions, and we can help talk with them about how to go about getting either resources or the steps towards working with their doctor. But we know that people have questions and need resources, so I would say call the 800 number, and that's a great starting place.
And that's preserves your, if you don't want to talk to neighbors or your doctor, I mean, it's
Right.
a confidential place,
Yes,
isn't it?
it's very confidential.
nice.
And the other piece with our 800 line is that we do support over 200 languages and dialects.
Oh, I
And
didn't
so
know
we
that.
have staff that can, you know, understand what the needs are and assist those.
Well, that's amazing, 200.
Yes.
Wow. And Yoli, any last comment?
Yes, if we all learn more about Alzheimer's disease, I think between all of us, we can create a more supportive community for these families and caregivers. I think we all can do, even if it's a small thing, it will make a huge difference in this for these families.
That's an excellent point to end on. It's really all of our problem, isn't it?
It is.
And we're all
It
part
is.
of the solution.
Yeah, and
yeah.
also if there's some families who need support in this area, we're also they can also contact us at Centro. We have a caregiver support in Spanish, and we also have a lot of educational sessions for caregivers and community members, as well as we connect them with other resources that they might need.
Yeah.
Well, thank you both.
Yes.
It's very nice to have you here. Thank you so
Thanks,
much.
Mary.
I've learned a lot, and I'm sure you have learned a lot too. I've been talking to Robbin Frazier and Yoli Chambers. Thank you for being with us. I'll be back again next week. Until then, have a good week.